So if we can build our business as a pathway, as a means for resources and visibility to a better life for, again, that very vulnerable demographic, it's something that we're very gratified by.
Welcome to Shopify Masters, the weekly podcast brought to you by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online and in person for a streamlined experience. Each week, we invite entrepreneurs like you to share what they've learned growing successful businesses. This is Shuang Esther Shan, and I'm helping our host Felix Thea share a story from Black and Bold, a purpose-driven supplier of coffee and tea pledging partial profits to support youth programs. In this episode, you'll hear from Rod Johnson, who founded Black and Bold along with his childhood friend Pernell Caesar. Rod shares with us how the duo left behind their decade-long corporate careers to start this impactful business, why it was so important for them to support youth programs and help break cycles of poverty, and what it means to be one of the first nationally distributed Black-owned coffee brands in America. Before the show, I wanted to chat about Shopify Ping. It's a free live chat app for Android and iOS devices. Did you know that shoppers who use live chats are almost 3 times more likely to complete their purchase? With Shopify Ping, you can share products, exclusive discounts, and help customers make purchases instantly. For more information, visit shopify.com/chat. What if the ritual of coffee is also a source of change? Today, we are chatting with Rod Johnson from Black and Bold. Welcome to the show, Rod.
Thank you for having me.
How did the idea for Black and Bold come to be for you and Pernell?
The business really got its start from a lifelong series of conversations between my best friend and I, Pernell, really rooted in this idea of how could we serve as a resource to the communities and the culture that really resonated deeply with us. So after a decade-long professional career in corporate America, we both respectively felt that there was a void in the business world in ensuring that people in our own backyards were given equal access and resources in exchange for their patronage of this business. And so we threw a couple of things against the wall to see how could we bring that passion to life. And the light bulb went off one day that we should marry our passion with our affinity for both coffee and tea. So that was really the inception of Black and Bold. Just through organic conversations, we landed on again bridging the gap between both our purpose and our passion.
Yeah, it's crazy to know that Black and Bold is actually, the first nationwide wholesaler for coffee and tea that is Black owned. What does that mean to you, especially with the purpose component of your business and you guys driving change through youth programs that you're running as well?
So I'd like to amend that just slightly, whereas we are the first nationally distributed Black-owned coffee brand, at least to our knowledge, and that holds a lot of weight. Though it is humbling to serve and be in that position, it also makes us wonder, why are we the first? There hasn't been much representation as merchants by people who consume the beverage as frequently as other demographics. And to that point, it compels us to do right by the opportunity. We want to ensure that those who have invested in us feel represented and feel as though the commitment that we have to our purpose is authentic.
A lot of the times people think about local impact and they think that maybe starting small is easier, for example, with an independent coffee shop. But you guys have actually taken on the role of setting up a wholesaler, and through this business that is scalable, and it's definitely tougher to start than something like a coffee shop. So how do you actually begin tackling this idea?
Well, we were very deliberate about being location agnostic for a couple of reasons. We, one, wanted to do local at scale, so having profound impact, but beyond the proximity of where we were geographically located. Our business model gives us the opportunity to allow anyone to participate in that social impact model by doing something that they do every day. So that was one reason why we didn't want to go the traditional route with a brick and mortar space. And then two, it gives us more flexibility in our operations, as well as the type of partners that we can bring on strategically.
Sounds great. I guess it sounds intimidating, right? You have to figure out where to source the coffee and then also establish relationships with people who can distribute and those who are established retailers. What were some of the initial steps you guys took to tackle some of those questions?
Neither Pernell and I had professional experience in the coffee or tea industries. You know, our relation to those beverages was just by way of our over enthusiastic consumption. So the learning curve was very steep as it pertains to a product sourcing, or rather through a product sourcing lens, and it took a lot. So just through normal, Google searches and so being now self-proclaimed graduates of YouTube University, that's really how we started to identify how we could insert ourselves into the industry. So we, started very small with a sample roaster in my friend's garage, and just to understand the process of bringing this harvested crop to an actual finished product.
What were some of the initial conversations like? You guys believing in this social impact model as people without experience in this industry, and then you going towards someone that you wanted to source from. How did the conversations went about?
Well, those conversations were very organic. Again, not having any professional or established connections to the suppliers of coffee, we really just cast a wide net. We started speaking with micro importers, across the nation who had access to the product at scale, to figure out exactly what type of coffee we wanted to provide to help bring to life this social impact mission rather. So those conversations were very organic, and we ultimately found those who um, wanted to be more than just a supplier, but actually a strategic partner, because they, in theory, had similar aspirations of resourcing the communities of their consumers.
And when you're initially sourcing coffee, I'm assuming, there's personal preference and blends or roasts that you yourself enjoy. How did you go about sourcing from like a flavor perspective?
Sure, sure. So coffee is a harvested crop that ultimately takes on the characteristics of crops that are grown within close proximity. In all actuality, it speaks to the farmer's economics. So those flavor notes that you see, we wanted to match those with our own personal preferences. And so, similar to a wine, this crop, these beans, if you will, the pit of the coffee cherry, we wanted to make sure that again it embodied what we personally liked as well. And so when we think about our visits to coffee shops, and our own home brewing methods, we sought out very deliberately coffees that we think would appeal to those who had similar tastes as our own.
How did you move on to the next stage of finding those who can help you distribute and getting retailers on board?
Our go-to-market strategy was multi-pronged. We initially launched our online store via the Shopify platform. From there, we wanted to branch out to retail distribution, because that gives us the largest opportunity to allow people to participate in that social impact model. So my business partner had built a career working for big box retail, and that gave us insight to anticipate what questions would be asked of us as we pursue those opportunities, pursue those new distribution channels. So through the formal process, we begin to ask questions and give ourselves the opportunity to be considered for these retailers to carry us on their shelves. To prepare for such, we probably completed maybe 20, um, uh, we'll call them pop-up events, that gave us access to buyers in the retail industry. And so establishing those relationships, and having insight to when those buying periods would begin, really allowed us to get the brand ready to be considered.
So you mentioned that Pernell has this experience in retail relationships. What were like some of the key questions that you mentioned before that another business should be able to prep for and answer when they're approaching a retailer?
So one change or alteration we needed to make as a result of needing to be considered was our packaging, and ensuring that it was attractive to today's consumer. If we are going to stand out among those legacy brands, it was imperative that not only our packaging had some aesthetic appeal, but that it actually fit on the shelves. So just understanding that literal landscape would be helpful for anyone as they want to pursue retail distribution. In addition to that, ensuring that operations would be able to meet the demand that exists with having retail partners like big box stores. We had to go back to the drawing board a couple of times and really map out what it would take in order to get our operations to a point that um, you know, we will be able to, again, like I said, meet the demand that exists um, with those type of partnerships.
And you also mentioned these events or pop ups that you attend so that you can meet the buyers during those periods where they're thinking about the future seasons of buying. So, how does one go about one finding these events and determining if these events are worth their time and effort to pursue?
The answer is simple. The buyers and these corporations see these partnerships as mutually beneficial. So they are consistently marketing when the next one is. And so I would, or rather, what we did was just, simply inquire if there's a particular retailer that or relationship that you're interested in. It's relatively easy to find what events they will be hosting. I'm not exactly sure how that looks like going forward, considering the current state of affairs. But for all intents and purposes, those events would be marketed in a way so that they can attract um, merchants essentially to carry on their shelves.
How does one prepare so that attending one of those events is like making it worthwhile for their time and energy?
It depends on the objective that your business has. For us, we really wanted to introduce or rather integrate ourselves into the space where Black founders existed. So we would seek out events that were tailored to highlighting and amplifying the efforts of that particular demographic. You know, if and again, the objective drove essentially us looking to participate in that event. Um, Consider the audience. Are you looking to grow your B2B sales or B2C sales? Those type of events, or rather those answers to those questions, will then dictate the type of events that you should look to attend. Um, so ultimately, the objective and the goal that you're looking to accomplish will dictate the type of events that you look to attend.
So once you do get a yes from a buyer, that actually is, a significant increase of sourcing that you need to adjust for. How did you go about figuring out, once you do have this agreement set in place, how do you then go back to those who you're sourcing from to make sure everything logistically works?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we started in our garage, and our focus was, just selling to people who we had relationships with. That was our initial audience, and Once we got that first yes, and the excitement subdues, and you have to then figure out what is it going to take to meet that. We immediately hopped on the phone to identify and to bring in inventory that we thought would be adequate enough to supply that initial PO that we received. Um, and it's just an ongoing process, or a repetitive process from there. Um, we initially brought on micro importers that we knew had more than enough inventory on hand, so that when we received that initial yes, it wasn't necessarily a scramble. It was more so ensuring that we had the resources and all of our ducks in a row on our end to then activate um, what that relationship really could look like with our suppliers.
I like that. So definitely being prepared and understanding like how the workings of those who you're sourcing from is looking as well. Awesome. So let's, I guess, I mean, within 2 short years, you guys have worked with some really amazing retailers, Whole Foods, Target. And I know that especially with COVID-19, there is even more complexities. How did you guys work through some of those challenges while kind of maintaining these new relationships?
So having retail partners like the Targets, Amazon, and Whole Foods of the world, can contribute to the sustainability of the business now and in perpetuity. We were all thrown a curveball with the pandemic, and having those relationships solidify beforehand was something we're very grateful for. Those organizations really believed in us, and with that vote of confidence, it better allowed for anybody who needed that familiar validation to choose us at shelf and continue to choose us at shelf. So, in addition to that, we were able to collectively make a much larger impact on the community and the demographic that needs us now more than ever, given this global pandemic. And so, the consumer behavior has shifted in a couple of ways over the last 8 months or so. There is a heightened focus on supporting small businesses to ensure their sustainability during the current state of affairs. Black owned, minority owned, women owned businesses as well. And then also ensuring that there is a sort of a vote with one's purchase in businesses that support the communities of their consumers. So really, our business, checked off those three boxes, and that can, well, we can attribute our success during the current state of affairs to that.
Do you also find that because of these relationships, they are also in a way helping you guys be known to consumers that otherwise might have not heard about Black and Bold?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just having home locations on those shelves, lends itself to brand familiarity. People are then able to recognize us, and subconsciously, um, you know, we start to kind of bleed into their subconscious, so to speak, by way of those retail partnerships. So absolutely, it does lend itself very well to having those relationships with getting our product and our brand and our mission in front of an audience that otherwise may not be familiar with us.
Let's talk about the mission component and the purpose side of Black and Bold. What was it about youth programs for yourself and Pernell that was so important to focus on?
Sure, sure. So our mission to make purpose popular is really best defined by that commitment to local and national nonprofit organizations. We pledge 5% of our profits to those entities that are keenly focused on enhancing workforce development, eradicating food insecurities or youth homelessness, or as well as instilling skills about urban farming or coding. We were very intentional about selecting that vulnerable demographic because of our own upbringing. Pernell and I were both raised in Gary, Indiana, in ill resourced households. And we're fortunate to have a support system around us that allowed us to overcome the obstacles that we were initially faced with. We recognize, however, that not everyone is fortunate or in similar positions. And so if we can build our business as a pathway, as a means for um, resources and visibility to a better life for, again, that very vulnerable demographic, it's something that we're very gratified by.
I mean, especially a time when we're talking so much about changing things on a systematic level, I think it's so cool to see what you guys are doing to break poverty cycles and offer opportunity at those key moments so that youth who are coming from a disadvantaged background can actually have resources versus just aid to kind of grow their skill set and kind of change the direction in which they can lead their life.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, I've spent the last decade helping institutions of higher education raise funds for a variety of reasons, whether that be scholarship, technological advances, building upgrades, you name it. That's great. But those people are much further along in their journey, and there are others who may not necessarily make it to having those opportunities because they didn't have insight to a different way of living. They were limited, no fault to their own, but just by way of circumstances that they were born into. And so, if we can impact people earlier, I think that then helps people to really realize their full potential.
Amazing. I also find that purpose driven businesses are also operating, it feels like two separate entities at once. There's the mission component and your business component. How do you guys go about balancing the two of profit and purpose? Because I think both are very important for your success and also just showcasing that being purposeful can be hand in hand with being profitable as well.
The more our business grows, the greater impact that we are able to have. That's very simply put. So one inspires the other. We are compelled to ensure that the way that we conduct business is sound so that we are able to contribute more to these organizations that we've already adopted as pledge partners, as well as expand that reach to more organizations across the nation. So, we are consistently reminded that in order for us to really fulfill the purpose and the mission of the business, that we need to have sound practices that sustain the impact that we're looking to have now and in perpetuity.
I also wanted to ask, there is such substantial growth. When you mentioned you guys starting out in your garage, I imagine everything is very hands on and you get to know everyone that you're working with or building a relationship with. And now that you do have a network of so many retail locations, you do have to let go of some of the control and give these different areas of tasks to other people. How has your mind kind of shifted as you scale up, and what have you had to change in order to be able to scale and pass on some of the responsibilities to other people?
This is our baby. Black and Bold is. We were, as you mentioned, very hands-on early on with roasting the beans, to packaging the beans, to then shipping them. And so now having to relinquish some of that control in order to grow the business is bittersweet. It speaks to, again, the growth of the business, but it's a reminder that we want to continue to have this personalized touch, even though there are more hands in the pot, so to speak. So to that point, we've had to actually hire and bring on employees, as well as contractors in some key functional areas for us, that ultimately allow the business to realize its full potential. So though I miss the days of actually doing some of that myself, and I'm not saying that I'm completely, or neither Pernell and I are completely removed from that process, but it was of absolute necessity for us to source people who not only could give us a helping hand, but also believe in the mission as much as we do.
What were some, I guess, key moments or key lessons that you guys had to work through, but you felt like you learned a lot? And looking back at it now, like those were some of the big moments for you guys.
Sure. We're still digesting and unpacking a moment right now, and that's being affected by our business being affected by COVID-19. And what we've learned in summation would simply be to stay nimble. This this pandemic that we are experiencing was one that no one could predict, and it really flipped upside down our practices, our approach to business, and what and the health of the business at one period in time. And so it's a reminder to not draw such hard lines in the sand, considering that you may have to pivot and pivot very quickly in order for your business to sustain.
And what were some of the areas of pivoting that you had to make?
Yeah, operations was one. Having to furlough some of the employees that we just brought on to service the needs of our retail partnerships. It was a very difficult decision in that moment, because we know that we are responsible for the livelihood of people who are employed by us, and and then having to run operations on our by ourselves for a period of time was necessary. Fortunately, we are on the other side of that decision and have brought back on our staff and have actually brought on more. But in the immediate aftermath, it was a very difficult decision. Other areas where we had to pivot was the sourcing of our inventory. There was a decline in demand immediately when the pandemic hit. And so there was no need for us to continue to bring in inventory at the rate that we had prior to. Um, and that was a little nerve wracking because we didn't know if that decline would continue, whereas we would have to close the doors of our business. And so, again, that just speaks to this moment that we are experiencing right now and how flexible you have to be, because we're still experiencing it as we speak today.
And definitely each day, each week, there's, new information and change of events. So, yeah, to your point, like staying nimble and adapting is super important right now. So, what about the moment in history right now where there are so many people that are looking towards you guys as role models in a sense? It's tough because, there's issues on your own end that you're trying to figure out. And then there's also a lot of spotlight. So, how do you balance both of it where you're figuring out all the things that are changing because of the pandemic, but then also taking on the role of showcasing that purpose is popular?
Sure. I would have to tip my cap to our support system. They are key in ensuring that we keep the main things the main thing. Those venting sessions between my business partner and I, those many conversations, to remind us of why we are on this journey are very much so necessary now. It is humbling to be in a position to serve as a role model, but that fuels us to continue down this path because that's why we started this business and started this journey in the first place. Not necessarily to be role models, but to spark the change that really could have perpetual impact down the line. Um, we're still figuring that out, but just having those open lines of communication with ourselves and those that are around us allow us to keep that balance of you know, identifying our own vulnerabilities as new business owners, but then also meeting the moment that exists, despite our infancy as a company.
And I think what's beautiful is that, coffee, tea, these are daily rituals. So the fact that you can get someone on board onto the mission and also enjoying your flavor profiles is kind of like they're committed through this change to their life. So like was this something initially that you like definitely gravitated to, or were you kind of just happy that this is kind of the butterfly effect of bringing change through caffeinated beverages?
Well, that's interesting. Coffee and tea are the second and third most consumed beverages in the nation, and I mean that might even be globally. Don't quote me on that, but at least here in the nation, number two and number three behind water. And so this is, to your point, a daily ritual of millions of people here, and to be part of that, to have people trust us with such a delicate and yet key part of their day. It is it's inspiring to make sure that one, we get the products right, and that there is quality that exists in that exploration process, but then there's also meaning beyond the cup, meaning beyond the beans. um, you know, Given how, again, how important that daily ritual is, it now contributes to an even more important issue at hand, and that's ensuring that those without are resourced with their bare necessities.
Are there any future projects or future products that you're able to share right now that you guys are working towards?
Um, yes, there's one in particular, one campaign essentially that we're working on, and that's to highlight our supply chain, and really shed light to how to be intentional with where you source and how you source, and just all of one's sourcing practices. So, around National Coffee Day, which is September 28th or 29th, end of September is probably better. We are looking to launch a campaign that, again, will shed some visibility to the efforts that we take to really be deliberate about our supply chain from end to end, from farm to cup, is a better way to put it.
Yeah. And a lot of those relationships, you're impacting individuals globally because farmers themselves, they definitely go through a lot because of the fact that, depending on the crop, it is a shade crop. There's so much surrounding heritage crops that are going extinct, or the importance of just being paid fairly as farmers. So, yeah, that's really great to hear that you guys are also focusing on highlighting the farmers behind the beans as well.
Absolutely. We source our coffees and all of our products fair trade where possible. And in particular, we are a little more bullish on bringing to market natural processed coffee. And this is something that hasn't been done at scale, and we see the opportunity to do so. This coffee in particular is very unique because it's sun dried by Mother Earth. It doesn't go through the power washing process of separating the cherry pit um, from the actual cherry. And again, it speaks to the more um, historic process of bringing coffee to the masses. And so that's something that we're really excited about, because that's a process that hasn't necessarily gotten its just due on a national or even global scale.
I guess also, how does it feel? There might be consumers out there that probably doesn't understand all of the history or all of the steps that goes into coffee processing, or they might not know about your mission, but because of their consuming patterns, they're just making a purchase, and then in return, they are actually creating all this change through that. because you're also making this very easily accessible for consumers in general as well.
Sure, sure. So again, just by checking something off of one's grocery list, you then contribute back to the surrounding community, locally, as well as domestically, here in America. It's an honorable position to be in, because again, that's if you have the means to do so, then you should be identifying ways to support those who are not in your position. And once people realize that they can do that by doing something that they do every single day, we're happy to know that they found and identified that they can do that by way of our brand.
Mm. And what was it like working with your childhood best friend? What were some of the conversations before you guys decided that, we could be business partners in addition to friends?
There are benefits, there are pros and cons to working with your friend, a friend of over 20 years. Allows us to have very intentional conversations, whereas we are very upfront and honest with each other. And in addition to that, there isn't the hurdle of figuring out whether or not we are aligned to a our greater purpose that had been established over the last couple of decades. And so again, it was just a matter of figuring out how could we bring that shared purpose to fruition.
Hmm. And what kind of dynamics do you guys have? Is it more like complementary? Do you guys kind of look after different areas of the business?
Absolutely. That's the one of the pros is that we recognize each other's strengths and we play to those strengths. So over the last decade, I've worked in the nonprofit space as a professional fundraiser for both academic and healthcare institutions, while my business partner built a career in the retail merchandising space, and as a salesperson. So those skills absolutely complement each other when we think about the business model that is Black and Bold. Though we have no formal background as starting a business, having that professional experience or those respective professional experiences really lend themselves to growing the business in a way that we've had over the last couple of years.
I did wanted to ask you guys about how you guys like your coffee or tea, and I guess what is your like favorite blend currently, and how do you guys go about prepping your beverage?
So prior to starting Black and Bold, I didn't drink coffee. It was more so if I ever, decided to partake, it would just be to get the caffeine, because I needed to stay up and study all night in college, or I had a long drive ahead of me. So it really wasn't a coffee enthusiast. However, that pendulum has since swung now that I've been exposed to a different tier of coffee. So personally, I like our Rise and Grind blend. It's a medium roast, whereas it's not polarizing. Yeah, I think it's inviting for anyone who, whether you are further along in your coffee journey or you're just starting out, I think this is something that is very palatable. And I consumed that through the French press brewing method, which is a personal favorite of mine as well. So that's it on the coffee side. On the tea side of the business, I'm a huge fan of our green chai tea. Gives you the taste and the flavor profile of a traditional chai, but then also gives you the health benefits that exist with consuming green tea as well. So great products, and they just happen to be our best sellers via Shopify. So yeah, definitely would encourage anyone to check them out if you're interested in trying some new products.
Awesome. Do you know what is Purnell's preferred beverages?
I don't know if he drinks a lot of tea. That is something that I will have to find out. But I know whenever I'm at his place, he is, drinking our natural process Limu Ethiopian single origin coffee by way of the pour over method. So, just a little different than the rise and grind, one on the processing method, but then also the flavor notes considering that it has this chocolate and blueberry undertone that comes with a nice brewed cup of coffee. So I know for a fact that's what he would say is his favorite.
Amazing. I'm trying to get into pour overs and practice my smooth, slow pours, so that's exciting. I look forward to all the future projects that you guys have planned, maybe even some branded coffee equipment, brewing gear in the future. So
Coming soon for sure.
amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, Rod.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Shopify Masters. My name is Shwang Shan. I would love to hear what you thought about this episode, so please leave a review wherever you are listening. Next week, Felix is back with another interesting conversation with a Shopify merchant, so please stay tuned for that. Until next time.